Good afternoon, Rotarians. I am Mike Vogus of the Program Committee, and today I welcome three guests representing our own Muskegon Lakeshore Chamber of Commerce. They are Cindy Larsen, President, Steve Olsen, Chair of the Board of Directors and owner of Northern Machine Tool, and Eric Ringleberg, owner of Next IT. Each of our guests brings vast experience to our discussion as to how businesses in our community will reopen and against what constraints they must compete. We're all concerned with what this pandemic is doing to our way of life, and in the next few minutes, we have an opportunity to discover some new perspectives. Cindy, let me start with you. Share, if you would, with us some of the difficulties businesses are going through right now, and what kind of assistance is the Chamber and other organizations offering to them?
Well, I'll answer the second question first because that's an easier question. We are trying to provide as much information to businesses as we can in terms of trying to monitor everything that's happening, the resources that are coming down from the federal, state, and local governments, as well as private resources. So we're just trying to get that information to the businesses, which is a task because there's so much information coming so quickly from so many different directions. What are the businesses facing? The list is so long, it's really hard to get your head around it. I think that's been the biggest challenge for businesses, whether their concerns are financial or lack of workers or no customers or being constrained by the regulations. It just goes, it's in every direction. And I think that's the biggest challenge as the business leaders are trying to get their heads around it so that they can make good decisions for the short term and for the long term.
Well, speaking of good decisions, let me cut to Steve. Steve, as the president, you've got quite a responsibility, or the chamber chair. Tell us a little bit about your business and what it does in the marketplace, please.
Thank you, Mike. Our company, Northern Machine Tool Company, located in Muskegon, we're entering our 76th year here at Northern, and we build automotive tooling and have for many, many years also some aerospace work and some furniture work. So what happened, I'm going to say the date, March 23rd, it's like the world stopped. From a business standpoint, it was a shock to say, hey, we have to stop. We had a couple jobs in our company that were considered essential, so we continued with that work, but that was very minimal in relationship to the other work that we had. So on that date, all of our employees were, for the most part, laid off, other than a couple. And since that date, March 23rd, and now we're nearing the end of June, we have pretty much in the same situation. So employees laid off. Fortunately, the unemployment was structured such that they got an extra $600 in addition to the Michigan unemployment, which was a good thing, but in itself created other problems in society and employers, whether it's hospitality, et cetera, creating one where not everybody is excited to return to work, especially in the summer months here in Muskegon.
Eric, let me go to you and ask a question regarding the work that you do. And the businesses that you work with and for must be vastly varied, but yet they're all connected by the technology that you service. What technology needs most affect successful reopening, and how are those needs going to reflect what's coming next?
Great question. Thanks, Mike. So Next IT is IT services provider. We act as the virtual IT department for companies across the state and throughout the Midwest. What we found with all of our clients, regardless of where they were as a territory or what kind of business that they were in, was just the struggle of getting up to speed on using remote technology, at least from their users' perspective. And coming back into the office, we've seen they're able to get back in the office and things are going pretty well. But the biggest change now really is just using more security, like single sign-on or multi-factor authentication, just to keep the all of their technology personal to them instead of out there in a worldwide dark web. So.
What kinds of changes is this situation fomenting?
I guess could you rephrase that question a little bit?
Yeah, things must be changing as people try and scramble to be where they want to be. What kinds of things are they doing to update what it is that they're accomplishing?
From a technology perspective, we're seeing a lot of people move their services up into the cloud through this, and looking forward after COVID. So they're moving their technology out in the cloud. They're updating their internet and increasing those speeds so that their users, their employees, can get in. And we're also seeing a lot of redundancy that they're starting to add in, as well as just training for their employees, so that they've realized that their employees need more cyber awareness when they're using their computers.
Steve, let me go to you and ask, how are employees feeling right now?
Well, the two sets, we have a few employees that are working, so even though it's not the norm, majority of our employees being laid off. And I think, from March 23rd through now, certainly ourselves and other employers, the reality starts to set in, because it's the first 2 weeks, excuse me, I think of it as short-term layoff or even a vacation, or maybe 3 weeks. After that, I think concern sets in, and they're wondering what the future is going to be. And so there's continually asked those questions about, hey, what do you see happening? How do you see it happening? And I say, I'm at a loss sometimes for answers. So I'm as much in the dark, as so to speak, as some of my employees. But so there is concern there, and I think we're going to reach a state, if this continues too long, that you're going to start seeing more anger from employees, maybe some family issues that we can't always solve because we don't have their employment ability. They're certainly employable, but we don't have the opportunity of work to go on. And with us being, I'm going to say, kind of at the bottom of the food chain, and we work on automotive tooling, a lot of the stuff we're working on is 2023, 2024, or have been. Well, automotive makes a decision that, hey, we're going to push those programs back. So something that we thought was going to be active here midsummer or fall is now being pushed back. So we have to stand basically on the sidelines and work hard diligently to find work that might be available out there. So it's definitely a challenge for employers and certainly our employees.
Well, let's take a turn towards the positive. Let me ask Cindy, do you see some possible positives from what this experience is bringing us?
Well, most definitely. I mean, businesses are definitely incorporating the new technology, as Eric mentioned, and there are new ways. They're developing new products. They're developing new ways to deliver those products. They're rethinking everything about their business, and it can be, for many businesses, a really wonderful thing. And if we can, if they have the patience to endure, we're going to come out with some really exciting businesses in the end.
Eric, same question. You see some possible growth and improvement coming from what we're going through now?
I do, actually. Regardless of the business that you're in, this has forced us all to look at things completely differently. How do we stay productive when we can't see each other or walk past each other in the hallway? How can we get things out to market when our entire shipping industry, it can sometimes be at a standstill with COVID? Are there different alternatives? If we have our current suppliers are held up today, we're forced to look at other suppliers that we didn't necessarily look at yesterday that maybe have better solutions for us and for our clients that are out there. I think that companies out there have not checked or updated their HR policies in decades, and we're going to have to look at that. And I think that's in some ways pretty exciting because the younger generations really aren't always accounted for in those policies. How we're supposed to dress, how we're supposed to use our technologies from the house, our household computers, like that. This is some pretty exciting times, I think. And I think that it gives us all a chance to save money, to be more productive, to top grade the employees that we have. And I think if we look at it from that perspective, when we come out of this in the next weeks and months and maybe even a year or so, I think that we're going to all be a lot better companies for it.
Steve, let me go to you. In a conversation online a few days ago, you made an observation that's so true regarding all of us only being familiar with the life that we go through, and consequently, so much of what others are experiencing we don't understand. Share with us, if you would, how this situation has affected you personally, and then after that, what we might be able to expect in the short term and the long term from your point of view as board chair.
Well, that's a good question because, as Cindy and Eric alluded to, we're so focused on what we're doing and with our customers, but there's a significant amount of activity going on outside of our little silos that we live in. And when you hear some of the challenges that others have, you understand that, I guess what brings me to mind on that was a conversation I was involved in with school teachers and parents, and how they are dealing with, or how they have been dealing with, educating outside of the schoolroom. And that in itself has been a challenge both for working parents, and certainly for teachers, and how do we make sure our students are getting educated. So as you listen to those conversations, someone like myself in manufacturing become aware, hey, there's a lot of challenges out there that extend beyond what we're dealing with. And so that, drives a point home that we're kind of all in this together. Now, I want to go back real quick that, there's a lot of positive. It's always a situation to dwell on the negative, but to talk about positive, there's a lot about leaning your company to become more efficient and better at what we do and how we do it. And so these situations drive us to that. And so those are exciting times. And I also, talk word about reshoring. We heard that politically, nationally, about reshoring drugs back to this country, because I think many of us, including myself, didn't realize how many of these critical drugs were made in China, so to speak. So now we're looking at bringing that back. But also along the term of reshoring, we're seeing many businesses that we deal with, some of the larger ones, are resetting their challenges of doing work offshore and maybe reshoring that back to the States. So that'll give a lot of us more of an opportunity here.
Eric, regarding IT, is there anything you haven't touched on that you might help us understand how this recovery might work from an IT standpoint?
No, I think I've gone through each of the areas that I think of. The companies that I'm dealing with are already starting to prepare for that recovery. If we're going back into the office was already there, and networks and computers were already there. So for the most part, we really think it's going to be, so far, fairly simplistic to get back into the office. It's just going to be the people that can't come back to the office yet. So,
Steve, help us understand what we might see in manufacturing as we climb out of this economic hole.
Well, depending on what level of manufacturing you're at, manufacturing is certainly moving forward. There's certainly some positive areas of it, but it's still going to be slow. I mean, when you take a large animal like manufacturing in this country, and you basically stop it in a day or a week, it takes a long time to get back to where you were. To get those key employees back in their area of expertise within your plant, like Eric alluded to, a lot of these, I'm going to say engineers and tech people are working from home, and how do you integrate them back into the manufacturing environment that they're so used to being in. And so well, it'll be a challenge, but I think, again, we're trying to lean ourselves into becoming more efficient at what we do, driven by what the economy is. And those of us in businesses are feed off of other businesses that are working at a larger scale. So it's going to take a while to ramp back up. One of the things I mentioned in our business, and the way I can see it, it might be different, that from where we were back in January of 2020, January 2021, we might be, at 90% level, or could be at 100. But we certainly prepared ourselves for the challenges that are ahead. But certainly look at it with optimism from where we've been to where we think we can be.
Well, I'm pleased you used the word optimism, because one of the things that occurs to me is that there have probably been some pretty forward-thinking ideas that have been executed in the past month or two. Cindy, can you share with us perhaps one or two forward-thinking ideas that have been pressed forward in the past month or two? I know Eric mentioned one or two to me the other day regarding Western Avenue. Share that, if you would, please.
Yeah, that's a great example, is the way we're taking businesses out into the outdoors, which coincidentally was the chamber theme, taking it outdoors. So we really, that has been such an amazing thing to understand that, being outside is a place that we can still be. And I know just being is so important to human condition, the quality of life. And so to have the cities, and in particular the city of Muskegon, just jump to that opportunity to try to make sure that people could do things that in the past may have been regulated and they weren't allowed to do it. But instead, they're encouraging everyone to look beyond the old ways of doing things and take that business right outside, right outdoors. And it's so great that we have that opportunity here in the Muskegon area because we do have a lot of public spaces, whether they're right in the urban areas or our natural public spaces where people can still have a wedding outside and have everybody socially distanced. It's been really great to see people jump on outdoor spaces. So if you haven't been into the downtown area, you do need to drive around so you can see a lot of the streets are partially blocked off so that the restaurants can take their business right out into the street, and the retailers can do that as well. So yeah, it's been really it's nice to have a few fun projects to work on, let me tell you, because a lot of this has been some heavy lifting. And so it's great to have some fun stuff like enjoying the outdoors and businesses joining together.
Well, let me ask a question as we come to the end of our time together here today. Steve, do you have a word or two on what we might be thinking about moving forward?
I think it's positive. It's there again, to go back to what Cindy said, the geographical area that we're in, particularly the Muskegon area, with the land, the water, the bike trails that we've added, the sports complex, from Moon Lake Park all the way up to Montague, areas of activities. And I think people are more inclined to take themselves outdoors. Everybody gets tired of being cooped up. We're cooped up in the wintertime sometimes for too long, so we want to take advantage of this. And we have so many areas to do this. One thing I'll mention is I went to look for a bicycle the other day, a new bike, and to order it. You know what delivery was? I couldn't get it till October, this bike. So that tells you, and probably more so in our community, people are buying bicycles and they're outside walking and riding bikes. So a lot of fun things to do to look forward to this summer. We all have to as Rotarians. Set an example of taking it outside.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to our guests, Cindy, Steve, and Eric. We appreciate your insights and look forward to doing our part in this recovery. Back to you, Mark.